I'm going to start out with a little story that I hope that you're going to recognize some of your own experiences in. So we recently bought a new house, and being a do-it-yourselfer, I went through the house and realized there are some things that we want to change. And one of the first things we want to change is we want to replace some of the carpeting with hardwood floors. So I turned for advice where we all turn for advice these days. I checked with Google. Right? So I went to Google, looked into hardwood flooring, then I started poking around, looked for some inspiration on this old house, and went to Flip or Flop, see if I could get some design ideas, went to how to install a hardwood floor on YouTube, and then of course I looked at Amazon, Lowe's, Home Depot, started looking for some tools, some of the things that I might need. After about an hour, decided to take a little nap. When I came back, I was checking the news on Esquire, Washington Post, and Mother Jones. And this is what I got. Targeted ads for flooring from a vendor that I never searched for and I never visited. Now, I want you to imagine what it's like for someone like me and my strategy team. We do client research on everything from air sanitizers to condoms to adult diapers. So when we're targeted with ads, it can be quite embarrassing. But I'm going to take a few minutes today to talk a little bit about how those little ads that follow you around are emblematic of something that's a lot worse than a little embarrassment. Those little ads are retargeting you based on a virtual profile of you being built by nearly every site you visit, every app you use, every email you send. And that's a profile that you never get to see. And it's a profile that increasingly determines everything that you experience and that you ultimately see online. And that, I'll argue, determines lots about everything that you believe you can and maybe can't become. So there's no question that we're at an important historical moment for those of us obsessed with the process of communication. When an outgoing president in his farewell address talks about the profound impact of living in our own little communication bubbles, you know that it's part of the cultural agenda. But while Obama focused on the choices that we make to live in our own homogeneous filter bubbles and echo chambers, I want to direct our attention for the next 10 minutes or so on the choices that we don't make, the choices that are made on our behalf by algorithms, bots, that target us with the kind of information that they assume that we're going to like. Okay? So why even bother talking about this today? Well, it's not a new topic. Actually, the relationship between our online lives and our offline lives has been a concern for a very long time. You go all the way back to 1996 in Wired magazine when Sherry Turkle said, without a deep understanding of the many selves that we express in the virtual, we can't use our experiences there to enrich the real. So as you can probably already tell, I've been fascinated by this whole digital communication thing for a very, very long time. And in the early 90s, I dove headfirst into the emerging world of online services. Some of the professors in the crowd will recognize some of the logos. None of the students will recognize many. Delphi Forums, CompuServe, eWorld, Apple's own online world, Prodigy, Juno, Genie, and America Online. All of these were online options in the early 1990s that predate the popularity of the graphical, open, World Wide Web. Right around that time, I joined a startup and became an editor and a columnist with a magazine launched by Disney and Ziff Davis that ultimately had 1 million readers a month, and it was called Family PC. Our mission at the time was to explore the newly discovered consumer appeal of computer technologies in the burgeoning world of online services. And yes, as you can see from some of the covers, we were writing about wired teens and how online services are impacting your life in the early and mid-1990s. From there, I've continued studying and participating in the emerging and evolving digital revolution, eventually earning a PhD in communication with a concentration on the social impact of new communication technologies. And like a good Hamilton College grad, I can't help but see the world in terms of communication in the process of storytelling. Some of you are going to recognize what that's from. I'm a true believer in the idea that our entire cultural world is socially constructed, with communication and stories as a primary driver of what we experience, what we expect, and ultimately, what we become. The process of communication may not tell us exactly what to think, but there's plenty of evidence that tells us it impacts what we should be thinking about by setting the agenda, cultivating our outlook on the world, and coordinating meaning between each other, meaning between groups. Our own process of self-actualization, becoming the people we are to become, is in large measure a process of communication and storytelling as well. In a very real sense, to me, we are the stories that we tell ourselves. So we quite literally speak ourselves into being. We tell ourselves all the time, people like me do this. People like me wear this. People like me say this. And then we act and dress and speak accordingly. So it's incredibly interesting to live in a time where so many algorithms are being developed and so much artificial intelligence and brain power is focused on telling each and every one of us a single pervading thing no matter where we go online. You may also like. In the 10 hours and 39 minutes a day that Americans spend with their various screens, we're constantly being served, without any effort of our own, what people like us buy, what they read, what they share. I mean, what can be wrong with that? I remember the excitement of the early internet that came across this monochrome 9-inch screen on a Mac Plus brick. There was a whole bunch of them that I remember back in 1985. The first Mac lab was in the basement of the library. And so much access to so many things and ideas that you didn't have access to before. And that was the promise of the early internet and online services, to give us more access, more choice, more insight into a wider range of ideas and stories and cultures. And as we grew more and more accustomed to getting getting our information from the web, we wondered, why doesn't it know me better? Why isn't it filtering things out for me? Why isn't it just highlighting for me the things that I like? So when Amazon gave us the pervasive "you may also like" feature, or people who bought this item also bought, it was like the gods had given us a wonderful personalized gift. Recommendations and suggestions about what others just like us bought. And other tech giants have followed suit in the years since then. Most notably, news sites and social sites that we increasingly rely on for all of our daily information. They built their own recommendation engines that help to show us not just what people like us buy, but what people like us read, and what they share, and what they think, and who they date. So I pulled this down directly off of a website that does online matching, online dating. Notice any problems with this? I mean, look at Paul and John and Dan and Mark and John, and look at Emily and Cassie, Patricia, Suzanne, Isabel, Sophia, Emma, Zoe. They all look the same. Paid ads soon followed. This is a chart of all the technologies, dozens and dozens of programmatic buying services that marketers like me are able to use so that we can buy audiences based on those secret profiles. And these have all cropped up, and they're all building their own little secret profile of you so that I can target you with a message. All that targeting, all that channeling, all that sameness. It's not helping any one of us to become an individual or discover something new. It's just mainstreaming us into a narrow set of stories. So I want you to imagine with me for a second what it would be like that instead of a screen invisibly filtering what we read and hear for 10 hours and 39 minutes a day, that it's a person standing next to you or me or a teenager or a preteen and saying to them, hey, this is what people like us buy. This is what people like us wear. This is what people like us say. And as I mentioned briefly, much has been made about the filter bubbles and echo chambers that we all live in online, and that has had so much impact in this past election, and that has contributed so much to the growing polarization of the country. A growing consensus among communication scholars is that we, liberals and conservatives alike, are much more likely to have our prior biases and prejudices and worldview reinforced online rather than to have it challenged. And so by giving us such tailored access to stories about people like me, preferred by people like us, shared by people like us, and liked by people like us, it's narrowed our focus and made it more difficult to go against the grain. And remember, to a communication-obsessed person like me, stories aren't simply an interesting way of conveying information or conveying meaning or passing the time. They're constitutive of who we are. If we never find or have access to stories that go against the grain, our well-established grain and our habits of mind, how are we ever going to live lives that do? The way I see it, the fewer stories we have access to, the fewer possibilities we have for the lives we believe we can live, and the people we tell ourselves, we quite literally tell ourselves we can become. So I have a modest proposal for all the algorithm writers and the news and shopping sites that employ them to create features helping you to discover things like you might also like. Take those recommendation algorithms, right? Don't have to change the technology. Flip them. And change you might also like to you should also consider. Or more pointedly, you might not like, but you should read anyways. Now, what would such a feature do? It would introduce you to the kinds of things and people that people like you rarely even consider, or what people who are not like you read and buy and wear and say. It would fulfill the early promise of the internet to broaden our points of reference by exposing us to the widest range of stories the world has to offer. Stories that we can individually use to create new stories. Individual stories, unconventional stories, original stories. And through those stories, see new, unconventional, and original possibilities for creating a unique life story for ourselves. One that we can own, and possibly, more possibly, cut against the grain.